This is actually what was written in the Washington Post in the obituary. With his bushy white beard and easy smile, Ayatollah Khomeini cut a more avuncular figure in public than his perpetually scowling but much more revered mentor. And he was known to be fond of Persian poetry and classic Western novels, especially Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. He certainly created that environment for the people trying to live their lives, particularly women trying to live their lives in Iran. Hello, my name is Anne McElhenney.
And I'm Phelim McAleer.
And welcome to the Anne and Phelim Scoop.
Where are we today, Anne?
We're not in Los Angeles, Phelim.
We are travelling. And we're actually in Ireland today as part of our multi-state, multi-jurisdictional journey. And we actually weren't intending to have a podcast today, but...
literally when we were on the plane, you were fast asleep.
Yes.
I was doom scrolling through X and discovered that in fact an attack had happened. The shocking news of the death of Ayatollah Khomeini.
We were at war.
We were at war, yes.
Suddenly America was at war.
So we thought we couldn't not have a podcast,
yes.
Given what was happening. And actually it's really been interesting being in Ireland to see how just extraordinary the way the media are reacting to what happened.
Yes.
It's scary. It's like another dimension. It's like, what world are we living in here? I mean, we were really shocked to see the national broadcaster of Ireland, which basically didn't acknowledge that anyone in Iran was happy.
No.
Or at least they minimized it. First of all, it was buried in the report. And when they showed footage of people being happy in Iran, there were no real people in the picture. It was a couple of cars. What they did really focus on, was how sad Iranians were. And they showed these very large numbers of Iranian people in Iran crying.
Yes. And
so if you're living in Ireland and you're dependent on that media, you would think, in fact, that there had been a terrible, unprovoked attack.
And when we say Ireland, we actually mean Europe, which is mostly controlled by state-run media. They take their lead from that. And they are focused heavily on 400 days of mourning, or 40. One of those things.
Only 40.
How do you do 40 days of mourning now?
We're not sure now how you do 40 days of mourning. It's very hard to know.
Are you obliged to cry every day, or
do you get to
rent garments?
Do you get? I would say you have to rend your garments for sure.
What's rend?
It's rend with a D, Phelim, not with a T. God, seriously, where have you been? Obviously, not reading.
So rending
reading your Bible clearly.
Is rending cutting?
Correct, Phelim. Yes, Phelim, because you're so upset. But also, I would have thought that during a period of mourning that you couldn't go to work, which would be interesting. How does anyone get fed, or how does anything operate for 40 days? Anyway.
So actually, although the state media here in Ireland did accidentally interview an Iranian woman this morning who'd been living here long enough to have an Iranian-Irish accent, which is a very funny thing because it's very Iranian, she's speaking like this. And then all of a sudden, there's these Irish idioms in the middle of it. It's very funny, sort of this weird Irish-Iranian accent.
So what did she say?
Well, they said, how are people in Iran feeling? How do you feel?
How do you feel about
this? And she says, well, I have to say, obviously, I would never try and take joy from someone's death, but apart from the birth of my child, it's the happiest day of my life. And that goes for my family and every Iranian I know. So that is,
yes. So
it's funny. And another thing I want to say about the media here is, if you listen to the media here, you'd think everyone in America, except for the MAGA people, disagree with this invasion. And they don't actually show that there's possibly real divisions, even within the MAGA movement, about foreign intervention, about foreign wars. That's a big issue for a lot of people, is that America first should be not about bombing other countries, which brings me back to something I wanted to say was, will America win this war? Right? And America's been very good at not winning wars, Afghanistan, Iraq, and I think it's because they don't know who they're fighting, or they don't know who the enemy is, or they're afraid to say who the enemy is. Do you remember George Bush after 9/11? Islam is a religion of peace. Well, radical Islam, and by the way, a lot of mainstream are not interested in peace. And America went to Afghanistan and Iraq and thought, if we build them schools and mosques, they'll like us. And it's like, that's like building, going to Germany and building Nazi centers, Nazi education centers, and thinking this will make the Nazis. No, the problem was Nazism, not educating the Nazis. So, the problem is radical Islam. The problem is that Islam has not progressed, if it ever can. And, I call it the 3 cups of tea strategy. So you remember this book, 3 Cups of Tea? It was a bestseller by Greg Mortensen. I think he was a journalist anyway. He set up a big NGO, and it was all about how he was kidnapped, and he had a copy of the Quran with notes in it. And the head of his kidnapper saw it, and suddenly they started talking. And over 3 cups of tea, the first cup is a stranger, the second you're an honored guest, and the third you're part of the family. And he was released, and he realized, we just need to be.
All we need is tea.
And understanding and conversation.
Just talk to each other.
And look, you'll put up that headline there, how the US military fell in love with 3 cups of tea. Army officers became obsessed with the 3 cups of tea strategy. Turns out that the story behind the 3 cups of tea was a complete hoax. The guy was never kidnapped. He had pictures of his kidnappers. They were his bodyguards in Pakistan.
Just sounds one of those kind of stories that's too good to be true, and actually is. Yes,
if it sounds to be too good to be true, it is too good to be true. So, as this piece in the Washington Post said, the American troops, their 3 cups of tea strategy was like, we're social workers with guns. And, you're not. You're warriors. And to bring it back to this war, if Trump is not afraid to admit, and I think he's not afraid to admit, that radical Islam is the enemy, that this is not a time for a Venezuela strategy where you work with the next person in line. You have to completely denazify. Yeah, that's a good way of putting Iran.
Yeah.
And, and I don't care whether it's the Shah of Iran's son in as a constitutional monarch with a parliament beneath him or whatever, but the current leadership should have no role. The current ideologues should have no role in the running of the late Ayatollah Khomeini's country.
Exactly. And you were mentioning the Washington Post, and I thought it was, the jokes just write themselves sometimes when when we're talking a lot about the media and media malfeasance. When I saw this piece from the Washington Post about the death of Ayatollah Khomeini, I was like, I genuinely didn't believe it. So I checked it a number of times, and this is actually what was written in the Washington Post about the death. In the obituary, with his bushy white beard and easy smile, Ayatollah Khomeini cut a more avuncular figure in public than his perpetually scowling but much more revered mentor. And he was known to be fond of Persian poetry and classic Western novels, especially Victor Hugo's Les Miserables.
So he's basically Father Christmas then.
But funny, actually, I kind of like the last bit, by the way. He was particularly fond of Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. Well, he certainly created that environment for the people trying to live their lives, particularly women trying to live their lives in Iran. And there's nothing more heartening, by the way, than looking at the women ripping off the burqas and dancing in the streets. And it's an incredibly powerful picture. Is. But that Washington Post, this is really, it's such a joke. It's like a version of, Hitler, environmentalist, vegetarian, amateur painter, dog lover, brought a bit of regional notoriety to parts of Germany, dead at 56. No, but this is what they do. This is literally what they do.
I think in the headline they called him, leader of Iran who established Iran as a world power, or a regional powerhouse. It's like, by funding it's not even to call them bad actors. These are evil people. By funding Hamas, by funding Hezbollah,
these
by
are
funding the
people.
Houthis.
And for those people who are stuck in a world where they don't have social media, where Elon Musk hasn't saved the world by inventing X, this is what Iranians around the world, by the way, not even in Iran, but Iranians who were exiled after the Shah was deposed. This is how they reacted to the shocking news of the death of the bushy, white-bearded, easy-smiling Ayatollah Khomeini, avuncular lover of Persian poetry. This is how they reacted to that.
And guess what? There is no more Ayatollah!
So he didn't dream a dream. Oh,
Okay.
that's lame as well.
I know.
See what I did there? Like that.
I saw what you did there.
That's like me merging and jelly.
So before this,
Talking of good news.
talking of other good news, in other good news, which we have a very personal interest in, the headline from, and I just did this from The Guardian, but the headline from The Guardian is that the judge in North Dakota has ordered Greenpeace to pay $345 million over the Dakota Access Pipeline protest. Yeah. You remember this Dakota Access Pipeline protest. Phelim's going to talk about it a bit more in a minute. But I think what I really like about this, one of the things that I really like, there's a couple of things I really like about this. Greenpeace did not want the court to be, they didn't want to have the hearing in North Dakota geographically. They wanted it basically to be anywhere else other than North Dakota. And I think that was interesting because obviously if you have a court case in North Dakota, you'll have a jury from North Dakota. And people in North Dakota are not very impressed with Greenpeace, particularly over this particular pipeline.
I'm not very impressed with Greenpeace.
But I love this, by the way. So the judgment, which has just come out of $345 million, seems like an enormous number. Just to put it in a little bit of context, it is half of what the jury awarded.
We need to tell people what the Dakota Access Pipeline is. The Dakota Access Pipeline is to get basically oil from the oil sands in Canada into America.
Which would be great.
And basically it's a oil pipeline. And they had this at the Dakota Access grounds, they had these protests and encampments. And I went up there to do
Magda
to do some reporting.
I did not go.
And we spent a day with them. We had great fun reporting with them and all. And then the second day we wandered around the encampment. It's just a terrible place, really full of criminals. And but they were presenting themselves well to the public. And then I started asking awkward questions, and it went south really quickly.
Fast.
And then they basically kidnapped us and held us prisoner and wouldn't let us leave. And they wanted basically, to do us harm. We were trapped in a car, and they started. Let's play the tape. Actually, let's play the tape.
Please send someone as soon as possible.
Please send someone. Let's get it. Yeah, it's really getting at about 100 yards from the entrance, from the main entrance. Yeah, you'll see the crowd of people around us. They've got trucks around us. They're stopping us from leaving. People and trucks surrounding us. They're not allowing us to leave, and one of them said they're going to break in if we don't open the window.
We want to just go. We want to go.
No, they said that, and they won't. They said they would come in, and now they're all surrounding the vehicle and won't allow us to leave. They blocked us in with other vehicles, and now they're blocking us in with people. And every time we go to leave, they're standing in front of the vehicle. They're not allowing us to leave. I'm an independent journalist, an Irish independent journalist based out of California.
Are they sending someone?
Please send someone. There's 30 people surrounding our vehicle. We need someone now. I saw it. I can see the road, but there's nothing we can do. Please, they want to steal our equipment.
This is very scary. We want to just leave.
Still going, sir. We're going to take it off.
Is she sending
Please,
someone?
ma'am, you've got to send someone. Yes, hello?
Let us leave. Please let us leave. Please just let us leave.
Yeah, we can see the main road. We're about 100 yards down on the main road, off the main.
Please let us leave. Let us leave.
Yeah, they've moved the vehicles now. There's now people surrounding us, and but we don't want. We need to be escorted out here big time because this is not good. They're now shaking the car. They're now shaking the car. They're shaking the car. Yeah.
Safe,
yeah.
So we can divert this situation. You are part of the problem here, thinking with that settler mentality that you can call someone to save.
We just want to leave. We just want to leave.
So, I mean, not that we ever tried. Well, I suppose for the first day we were trying a 3 cups of tea approach, and
that didn't work.
It didn't work. Some people are just not amenable to 3
I was
cups.
worried that Magda would actually hand in her resignation and say that she was, it was unacceptable to work in such a hostile environment.
That is the actual definition.
It is the actual definition of hostile environment. And when she got the job in the first place, she wasn't told that she would be potentially put in her life in danger.
You think of people, he made a comment about my short skirt at work, or said, "Oh, you're looking well today," and I felt it was a hostile environment. You should try
the hostile environment. Yeah, where you guys were trying to record and film. So these are the kind of people who basically, for months and months on end, made it impossible for this pipeline work to go ahead. And I think the company, by the way, who are called Energy Transfer, Energy Transfer, were so right to pursue them in the law.
They were.
Because their case was really clear. Energy Transfer had done nothing wrong. They had fulfilled all of the permits. They had done all of the things that they were meant to do. And then this thing happened, mostly, by the way, fueled by outsiders.
Well, then Obama, didn't he pull the permits? So, I mean, they were successful, but Energy Transfer sued them. Do you remember? And then all the protesters left, all these Native Americans and all, and Heal the Earth and GreenPeace, and left tons of trash.
Oh, yeah.
Tons of trash. And the monsters, do you remember what else they did? They left puppies.
No, I didn't know about the puppies.
Yeah, sure. Get the picture. They left puppies.
Okay, we have to have the picture. I want 2 pictures put up now. I want a picture of the rubbish, by the way, which is really important.
Trash.
Because, by the way, the trash that's left behind after environmental protests is always very amusing to me. Whereas when you have any kind of protest from Republicans, conservatives, it's always left behind.
They're always out lifting trash.
Exactly.
And then they left puppies.
Oh. Sorry, I used to be strong and interesting, and then we got cats, and now I'm useless because of pets.
Yeah.
So anything to do with animals,
all the monsters. You
terrible.
should have been fined $345 million just for that.
And by the way, leaving pets in the cold in North Dakota is particularly egregious. This reminds me, Phelim, that we were recently in Texas, and it's just long. I'm not going to get into the whole long story, but we're talking to some people in the oil and gas business. Very, very interesting about. I know what was happening. It's a very interesting story, and it's something that I think we're going to have to bring in somebody and have an interview about this in the very near future. The Permian area of Texas, which is where we were, obviously has an incredible richness of resources, and is an ideal place for these data centers.
Yes.
And what was interesting was that the gentleman I was speaking to is in the oil and gas business. He was saying that this is something that they're obviously very focused on, is having the data centers actually put in the Permian area. And he said that obviously it's a more attractive environment because from a regulation point of view, Texas is a more happy clappy kind of place for industry
development,
and for development. So I thought it would be a great thing. But anyway, in the middle of all of that, I was sort of asking him about the landscape, the energy landscape. And funny enough, this conversation I had with him was before the attack.
Pre-war.
Was before the pre-war. But I mean, in fairness, people in the oil and gas business they've been talking about this for weeks. Everyone has been expecting this, but then sometimes things don't happen. And I said, is it going to be good or bad for prices and all of that? But I thought the thing that he said, and this is, you'll now work out, Phelim, my very odd segue here, which is really, where am I going with this? And I was saying, and it'll be good for you. It'll be probably a boom because the energy prices will go up and all of that. And he said, we've seen it all before. We've seen it. And the minute he said that, I was brought back to when we were making Frack Nation, and I was up in North Dakota, filming up in North Dakota and talking to oil and gas people. And I remember talking to oil and gas men and saying, and being from Ireland, knowing nothing about the oil and gas business. And of course, there was a ton of money.
The money was flooding.
The money was flooding. They were all buying big cars and everything. But I remember talking to these oil and gas guys and going, my God, you must be so happy and everything. And they said, and I've never forgotten it, they said, we've seen it all before. Yeah. There'll be this big high, loads and loads of money, and then literally next week, something will happen. And the thing changes.
Well, that guy was saying at the moment they're making no money from gas and no money from oil. In fact, sometimes they're paying the distributors to take away their gas. They're negative on the gas. That's how low the gas price, the natural gas price is. So, and we were saying, well, if this war happens, that'll be temporary. And they weren't thinking. He says currently it's $60 a barrel. They're not. It's not enough. They're not making a profit or making a very small profit, but it's not enough to attract any new investment. Investors will not go in and fund new wells with oil at $60 a barrel. And he said, even with a war and that it'll go up, but it'll be temporary. It will come down again. Yeah. No one will invest on a price.
It's a very tough business. It's very volatile.
I want to tell a story now, but I'm going to try and make it vague.
I think I know the story.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the lady?
Yes, the lady.
Funny. I wanted to tell that story. I loved. Yeah. All right. You can talk.
So we were at
an event.
Yes, we were at an event
in Texas.
In an oil-rich part of Texas.
We were in the Permian area. I mean, I already said that, so we have identified it as that much. But we were at an event there,
and we were driving in to this event. And to be fair, the houses around, and this event was in a rather swanky place. Let's say a very nice club in a very nice place, right? Very swanky. We're driving in. The houses were all quite modest. Around this particular
very similar architecture, and then suddenly out of the blue there is an incredible house that has a very distinct architecture, and it's gorgeous.
Massive, and it's massive. It's about 3 times the size of any of the other houses, and it's ultra modern, and it's got a statue of iron, a sculpture of iron joists all that.
Right. Okay.
Yes, and we actually remarked on it, and actually I remember you saying, I bet you the money for that came from oil and gas. Or we went in, and one of the first people we met at this event, the event was in honor of a friend, let's say, and we thought we were in this oil-rich place, so we were among like-minded people. And she says, "How do you know that person?" And we said, "Well, we did the Gosnell movie about abortion, and she really liked that, and we became friendly to that." And there was silence then. And
the woman we met certainly didn't. I reckoned she certainly didn't agree with us on the abortion issue. So I got no love from that particular mention of that. Which in this context where we were, you'd have expected better.
But sometimes abortion.
Sometimes, and in fact, our dear friend actually had remarked on that in the past. That basically,
yes. Well, the oil and gas people in that area, that can be libertarian, and that can make them kind of pro-abortion.
But then I mentioned also that we had made the documentary Frack Nation, and this woman said, "Oh yeah, what side of the argument were you on that?" And I said, "Oh gosh, very, very pro-fracking and very pro this great technology that has unleashed this massive energy that the world needs, by the way, but that the United States needs very specifically." And
she went, "Well, the friend that we were there to honor."
Well, I'm polar opposites from you on that. I just couldn't be more disagreeing with you on that. Anyway, long story short, we spent more time at the event. The woman, of course, moved off because she didn't want to talk to us. Yes. Spoke to another friend at the event who we said we'd had this conversation, and our friend said he knew exactly who we'd spoken to, and he said, "Do you see the beautiful house out there? The gorgeous, gorgeous house? That's actually her house." And then
that's where she was brought up.
That's where she was brought up. And then we said, "Where did the money come from to build the house? Where did the money come from of this individual?" And all the money came from oil and gas. And it made me. It's one thing that I think we come across an awful lot in this world is people. It's very funny. Like she's living the life. All of her lifestyle is based on oil and gas riches that were procured by people who work there very, very hard in a very tough industry and very volatile, as we said.
Very volatile.
And very, very volatile. And they had made money that she is now enjoying. And then she is trying to destroy that possibilty for other people, by the way. And it reminded me as well of the Disney heiress. So there's a Disney heiress, and her name won't come to mind immediately, but
Abigail.
Exactly, Abigail. And Abigail has been left gazillions of dollars, by the way, fantastic amounts of money. But she has a real problem with capitalism, a massive problem with capitalism. And I have a great solution to her problems with capitalism. And it's so simple, by the way. It's outrageous. Like, I could charge her, but it would be wrong, I just say to her, it's so easy. Give it all away to cancer research. It's solved in a second. Get yourself down to just keep maybe $100,000 to keep you going until you can get a job stacking shelves in Ralph's. Until she can get herself a wee secretarial job somewhere. But in the meantime, just give it away to cancer research. No politics, zero politics. Just give it away to medicine or to that amazing hospital, which I always hear about in Los Angeles, the Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, where no one pays ever. And the parents are put up and there's a hotel and everything for them. And actually talking on the very same subject, now I feel like I'm ranting. I was speaking to Dennis Prager's wife, and she was saying that where where he is. I'm not going to get into details, but where he is.
Dynasty, who suffered a catastrophic industry.
Catastrophic industry that someone came along at some stage and built a huge amount of nice places for people to stay close by there, and without any kind of drama. And I just thought there's so many places that money can go. And I was thinking that, you know, Abigail, the Disney heiress, who has this huge anxiety and huge just guilt and feels terrible, and she really hates capitalism and all the things that her...
But she's not prepared to give away the money.
Don't give away the money. You know, guess what? You're nothing but a big hypocrite. But I thought this woman was very funny.
Oh, no, I mean...
It was almost like, you know, I thought, I wonder where the money came from. And maybe it did come from embroidery.
Yes.
Or from making finicles. And for those of you who don't know what a finicle is, you need to look it up.
Yes.
But I don't think she made the money. I was thinking, and Phelim and I always joke about finicles, because we did meet somebody who was not making a living, but made finicles.
Made decorative finicles.
And sort of presented herself as somebody that was actually making finicles for a living. Anyway, this is far too much information. Moving right along.
Yes. So listen, we thought this would be a short podcast, actually, short intro. So what we're going to, and you know, we are traveling, and this is not the best facilities, let's say, to do the podcast with the best sound or lighting.
But what struck us was, given the season that we're in the season of Lent, we did an incredible interview a few years ago with Lisa and Alan Robertson
of Duck Dynasty.
Duck Dynasty fame, who are dear friends of ours. We just love them. And they wrote an extraordinary book called Desperate Forgiveness, telling their own story. Yeah. And I think Phelim and I joke about this, or at least I joke about this with Phelim, about that Christianity, you know, the problem with Christianity is that you're meant to love people who don't love you, which is very, very challenging. And then even more challenging maybe than that is forgiving people, and forgiving people who are very hard to forgive. And so if you ever needed to be inspired to forgive somebody, that's very challenging for you. Listen to the story that Lisa and Rob and Alan of their life and what they did and what happened and how they reacted and how they chose to be Christians. And it's pretty extraordinary. And
you may think you're a Christian and you may think you practice forgiveness, but when you
learn from the masters.
Yes, no, it's jaw dropping.
It's kind of jaw dropping and
inspirational
and really inspirational.
Although I would find I don't know how inspired I'd be to copy them, because they're special.
They're very special.
So that's why we wanted to play this interview again, because we feel like we should play it every year.
Yeah,
you know? It's like one of those things. Like it's a message that never gets old.
Yeah,
it never gets stale.
And we would recommend the book, by the way, Desperate Forgiveness by Alan and Lisa, and really, really powerful. So we're going to lead out with that.
Yes,
we are going to see you next week.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Thank you. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is a very special occasion. We are joined by Alan and Lisa Robertson, our extremely dear and gorgeous friends that we met on a cruise. I think a couple of years ago, on the Media Research Center's cruise. Where were we? Oh, in the Caribbean.
Yes.
Somebody has to do this, by the way. It's a dirty job, but we're willing to go to the Caribbean with the Media Research Center. You know, because we're just those kind of people.
It's purely educational. We got no enjoyment out of it.
No, we did not enjoy it at all. But can I just say, and I really do mean this. Meeting you guys was honestly, it was like a miracle. We were like this. We had this like instant, you know. And it's really weird. Like, you're from Louisiana with the accents and everything, and we're from Ireland with our accents.
Yes,
so that might have been the bonding itself.
Yeah.
But we definitely, it was like the big takeout for us from that.
We did enjoy it. I didn't mean that. I mean, it's hard work, these cruises, actually, because you're speaking, you're doing dinners with people from the Media Research Center, but I think everyone. It was a wonderful.
It was wonderful.
Well, from my perspective, Lisa wasn't on panel, so it was me and you two guys, and I didn't know who you were, but I had heard of Frack Nation before.
All right.
And so I'm trying. You're on a cruise ship. You can't Google. You know, there's no phone.
Yeah.
So I couldn't find out who you were. So I meet you guys, and we sit down at the table just like this. And Phelim opens up with a question, and then Anne is asked a question, and she just goes on I'm going to say about a 5-minute rant.
No, I don't think I would be like that.
I mean, and look, and I'm listening, I was thinking, I want to be this woman. You know, and you were so awesome. And so, in fact, the first thing I said when they asked me a question, because we were doing media.
Yes,
remember, because you
talking about
Hollywood, and I was on Duck Dynasty. So I was like, I want to be her, you know? So everybody laughed. But I think that was the initial bond, was just your passion for your projects and what you were doing,
Thank you.
and conservatism,
Yeah.
which was huge. And then we got together and had a drink. And then I think we realized that you guys work together on
Yes.
everything you do. Well, that's what Lisa and I do. And so I think that was the bond. It was like couples that are trying to make a difference.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating.
And that was great. And then we really did become friends. And then you very graciously, the family invited us down when we first of all had a first cut of Gosnell, and your family got to see it, and were like really helpful to us actually in every kind of possible way. So we got to go down and meet everyone, which was fabulous. And then you guys came and we had some days together last year, and now you're having it. So this is going to be the annual Robertsons visit to Los Angeles and to the Venice area.
Well, so I think we should explain for anyone who doesn't know who Alan and Lisa are. Alan,
That is not possible, but
there might be somebody in Timbuktu somewhere, because this is an international podcast.
Correct.
So Alan is a Duck Dynasty brother, or as you
beardless one.
as you people say, Duck Dynasty.
Right.
Yes, but he's the beardless one, and you didn't make an appearance on the show until relatively late in the series. Is that right?
Season 4.
Season 4, but what an appearance it was.
Well, we've hauled a lot of fish up this bank. We played baseball under these trees. Si shot a few squirrels out of them as well. We all got baptized in the creek back here behind me. And now here we are, almost 50 years after you two guys got together, having the wedding that you never had, with 4 generations of Robertsons looking on. I'd say this is the perfect spot.
I think your first appearance was a record ratings for the show. Was that a coincidence?
And also, not just for the show, but it is still the highest rated reality TV show ever in the history of cable television.
Wow.
So around 12 million. And so my thing was, if they had gotten me on that show from season 1, it could have been forget that it was a juggernaut.
That's
it could have
right.
been a juggernaut.
So
All they really needed was somebody that looked good. I mean, you're looking at all those beards. All they really needed was a good
Lisa says that I'm the best looking Robert, which when your wife says that, I appreciate it. But the bar is so low, man. Is it really a compliment?
Yeah, we're trying to stay in with all the Robertsons here. I don't want any of them to be upset.
So I just want to put that in perspective. 12 million people watched that show. I mean, as you say in your book, which we're talking about earlier, that's
Later.
Later, yes.
We talk about later.
Talk about later. I'm sort of editing as we go on.
Time having guests, and we're super excited, and clearly, you just have to forgive us a little bit for all of
For the jumps in the space-time continuum. So that's 8 million more viewers than the season premiere of Mad Men, which is supposed to be a hugely popular show. It's 3 million more than the season finale of The Good Wife, and The Good Wife was a great series.
Yeah,
it was on CBS. It was not on a cable show. So 12 million is an enormous nowadays. Nobody watches. 12 million people watch nothing. Maybe the Super Bowl, or something like that.
Well, it's interesting, Phil, because when the numbers were there, the entertainment media tried to ignore us as much as they could.
Yeah.
Because, let's face it, they didn't like us, they didn't like what we were representing. But they couldn't. I mean, the numbers kept surging and they couldn't ignore it. But if it wouldn't have been for that, they would have. But, that's just kind of what we have to deal with. You guys get it.
Yeah, we totally get it.
So,
but I also think it's worth mentioning what happened on that episode, because I think it was a very special moment. And I was just reading, and it's funny, just in general reading, and we're going to talk a lot about the book Desperate Forgiveness that Alan and Lisa have written. This is the second book of yours that I've read. You may have written other books, but certainly this is the second one we've read. But just rereading it again this morning, I mean, I literally get goosebumps reading it, and I think people who do read it will get that. It's so full of love, by the way. It's so full of faith and grace. And your description of that episode is very beautiful, actually. So why don't you tell people about that?
Well, it was, they were obviously, here's how it came to be. So at the end of every season, those first 3, in cable world, you do 10 seasons, 10 episodes, but they do it 3 times. So it's not like a typical, it was 30 episodes. So it was only 1 year had passed since the show had started. There were 30 episodes.
Wow.
So see, it's not like a typical show. Sure. So we're only in the 2nd year. So it's still pretty fresh, for the family. But at the end of the third season, they kind of sit everybody down and said, "What do you think?" The show's obviously very popular, so they're just, "Is everybody okay? Is everybody feeling good?" And so my mom, Miss Kay, who's the sweetest person.
Oh God, she's so, like, I have to interrupt you. She's fabulous.
Yeah, she's great.
I want her to come here and cook with me.
That's right. That's gonna happen.
That is going to happen.
She wants
adorable.
she
Okay,
wants to
sorry.
And so she says, "Well, I'm not happy." Well, the producers are shocked because how could Miss Kay not be happy? And so they said, "Well, Miss Kay, what is it?" I mean, it really surprised them. She said, "I have 4 sons. This show is so very popular. The whole world knows about 3 of my sons, but nobody knows my 4th son. I won't be happy until he's on the show." Oh. And so that's how I got on. Yeah. You know, because they didn't want to preach on the show. They were afraid. They thought I was going to be wearing a robe
Hollywood didn't want, the producers didn't want.
Exactly. So because they were afraid of me, they thought I was going to be all holy tone and speaking like a Baptist preacher. You know. So she insisted I was on the show. So they basically, when they worked out the idea, it was the 50th anniversary for Mom and Dad. We were having a celebration. They decided to do a vow renewal, and so they needed somebody to be the head of that. And who better than the oldest son, who was a pastor and could
but also who had witnessed so much, actually.
Exactly. So when that little speech I give in TV world, you can't go long. All of that was super heartfelt that I wrote myself because we had witnessed, many years of struggle, and then many years of blessing, and so it was very touching to all of us. It's still probably one of the top 2 episodes of the whole series.
Yeah. So your book is called Desperate Forgiveness. My first question is, what is forgiveness, and what did some people think they know what forgiveness is, but you think they're wrong as well? What is not forgiveness was almost as important as what is forgiveness. And why desperate forgiveness? Why not just forgiveness?
Oh yeah, that's good.
And that's a great question because when we first went to our literary agent, we had the title, which you rarely end with the title that you begin with, right? You get in with the publishers. And desperate forgiveness was our idea. And the agents were like, "Oh no, I don't like that word desperate. That's not gonna. They're never really give you all." And we haven't even pitched to a publisher. He just didn't like it. And I said, "Well." I said, maybe we'll change it. I said, but the reason we use the word is because Lisa and I have both been in a desperate place in our life where we didn't feel like there was any hope for anything else. And so in that desperate moment is when we cried out and said, "God, we need help here. We don't know what else we could do." So we fought for that word. And thankfully, when the publishers came alongside, they loved it. And that's all you need. What's the publisher?
And we're not the only ones. There's a lot of people who do not do anything until they are desperate.
Yes.
Desperation makes people react. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times if they have to be desperate to be forgiven or to forgive someone before they will ever go in and make them do it.
Yeah.
So the idea is when there's nothing else that can fix the breach. And so obviously we come at it in a lot of the stories in the book on marriage, but we also tell stories about a father and a son and his son after him. So some of these things can be multi-generational. And so you asked a great question. What is it not? Most of the time people, to get through a situation, whether it's something very light, like I stepped on your foot in an elevator, oh, I'm so sorry, to something major. What we try to do is we try to come up with anything other than have true forgiveness, because the guy may step on your foot and you may say, "Oh, no worry, you step on their foot," and they walk out and they may just be super angry with you, but you'll never know. And they walk away. And so you never resolve it. Who cares? It's just a person in the elevator. But what if that's someone you care about? What if it's someone you have a relationship with? And then you have this distance that grows, and maybe it's over little things that become big things. So forgiveness is not just saying, "Oh, I'm sorry." Forgiveness is something deeper inside a meaningful relationship. It means that I've got to say it, mean it, and live it. And that means if I go back to every time the one thing you hurt me and bring it up again, I haven't really forgiven you.
Yeah.
I've just pushed it down the road till the next time we get into an argument. So that's kind of how we approach the concept of forgiveness.
But you're Alan Robertson, and you're Lisa Robertson. You're a very successful pastor. And you're in a very successful you were in a very successful reality TV show. And even before that, you were in a very successful entrepreneurial family. You're a best-selling author. You're a preacher's wife.
you don't have anything to you don't have anything to forgive. You have a perfect life. What would you know about forgiveness?
You want to start that one?
Look, I think anybody that's in a relationship, there's room for forgiveness because we're humans. We're always going to hurt those that we love the most. And, we take it for granted. But I think anybody that's grown up, everybody has crap in their life that they need to forgive somebody of, or they need to ask for forgiveness, Mine was as a child. I had an uncle who molested me at age 7. Well, do you not think I need to forgive him? I do, because forgiveness is what's going to heal me in order for me to continue on and to be prosperous in my life.
And it wasn't necessarily for him, more for her.
Yes.
Because that pain had trapped her. And then how she viewed men had caused her to make a lot of bad decisions. And we made bad decisions together. No, I think you're right. It's when we did our first book, A New Season, we did the Huffington Post, which was a bold move. Just saying. And so Lisa was so nervous.
I did not enjoy it.
She was so nervous. And your question was interesting because this woman who was doing the interview, she said, well, I've looked at your book and she said some things. You said, you've had success and all these great things have happened in your life, and yet, you chose to abort your baby because Lisa had an abortion during this period of time. So I knew abortion was going to come out at some point. And she was like, why shouldn't other women have that same choice? So their lives can turn out just like yours. And Lisa had a great answer. She said, well, didn't you read the whole book? Because it was really hard.
Yeah.
And here I am 35 years later, still regretting that decision.
Yeah.
So it was, but you had to say it because people look at it as you postured that if everything turns out great, therefore there's no issues. But we learned that it was through the issues that everything turned out great. So it's just the opposite.
Yeah, you talk about, Lisa, you talk about the abortion you were 16 in the book. And it's, I remember when we started the whole Gosnell thing, I remember talking to some guy who was an advertising executive from New York who you'd think would be pro-abortion and all, and he was going, people need to understand that an abortion clinic is not a time machine, right? You don't go in there and come out never having been pregnant.
Right.
And everyone told you that this was a solution to your problems, and you'd never think about it again. You say in the book, you think about it every day, and forgiving yourself and forgiving yourself for that is, I suppose, as you say, an important part of desperate forgiveness as well.
Yeah.
And Al had his tire-earned days.
We need an explanation.
Yes. What I like is the line, he came back to the prodigal son, but except that the prodigal son didn't have to fix 2 flat tires.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, obviously, we opened this book as we finished our last book was sort of here's where we go from here. But we went back because it was important for people to know we come from a family. When I'm speaking, I like to put up 2 pictures. One is a family of 2017 Robertsons. There's 3 generations there, a lot of faithful people, and admirable people.
Yes.
The teenager, Sadie, our niece, spoke to 1 million teenagers last year.
Good girl. Yeah.
In life.
She's wonderful.
So you look at that picture and think, oh man, this family's amazing. But then I like to show a picture right next to it of the 1972 family when it was just mom and dad and myself and Jason. Mom was pregnant with Willie. And this family was just in major struggle and crisis, and we were split up, and all these difficulties were happening. And so I would say, it's hard to reconcile those 2 pictures, unless you know the story.
Yes.
And that's the same thing with me. When our family finally got things going in the right direction, well, I, like a lot of kids will do, I wandered away. It was after my high school years. And so I wound up in New Orleans. It's just not a good place to wind up without direction. I love New Orleans. There's a lot of great culture there. But if you're not there with, some character and strength, you're going to have trouble. And so I wound up getting in a terrible situation and a jealous husband. I was dating his wife. And we sort of had a double lie going on because I was only 18. She thought I was 21 for some reason. I can't imagine why. She was 26 and said she had been separated for a year, but actually it had only been 2 weeks. So that lie caught up with both of us, and her husband decided that he was going to separate my head from the rest of my body with a crowbar. And sometimes a crowbar can do what others couldn't to, cause me to realize what I was missing out on. So that really shaped me. And that, by the way, that was my desperate moment that I mentioned in the book. That was when I was at a place where I couldn't reconcile anything. Like, I'm here, I'm bleeding. If it had been another 5 minutes, I would have been killed. And I thought, if that's what I got here in this life, this is going to be a short run. I'm going to be another statistic in New Orleans, and there's a lot of.
Oh my God!
So.
Well, as you say in the book, with how your father, that picture from 1972, it was your family situation was a mess.
As bad as a bad thing could be.
Yes, right. And you say without desperate forgiveness, there'd be no Duck Dynasty or Dynasty.
Dynasty to say here in this country, Phelim. You said dynasty.
Dynasty sounds so much better. I wish you just said that. It sounds more culture. It makes it sound like, ooh, wow.
So we stick with that then. We have the Duck Dynasty. We got the Duck Dynasty people with us today.
I like that.
I mean, you may be a tyrant person, but you're also a child of forgiveness. That's right. As you say in the book, and without that would be no Duck Dynasty.
And I will say what's interesting, just to add to that, is that when I got back home, now with this new perspective about forgiveness, because my family welcomed me in. I didn't get a long list of things that I'd done wrong. They just hugged me and said, welcome home, which was incredible.
Yeah.
And so a few months after that, first I was like, women and me aren't good together. I just have so many bad. So I was going to just walk it alone. That lasted about 3 months. Yeah. And I thought, that's not my gift. But you know who I'd call? Lisa. And I had broken her heart and had left her in the lurch, and it really helped send her into her tailspin that we talk about in the book. But she was the person I called. I think it's because I finally had a concept of what it looks like to be able to embrace the grace of someone else.
Yes.
And so, then she and I began our dating life and ultimately our married life together. And so I think it was that's what drew me to her, because I knew she was broken just like I was. She hadn't had a crowbar, but she'd had a lot of bad stuff.
Sure.
And so I think when we got together that first date and started talking about some of our bad things that have been happening the last 2 years, we just it was like two beggars that had kind of come together and found some bread and was like, let's just see if we can move forward.
I think, I think for people, listening to this and learning about your books, I think the thing I would really want to say is that I think the gift that you bring people is that you are not perfect, and that you actually have a past that would rival any. And I know we've talked about this before. That your past would rival anyone's bad story. Everything. With affairs and with dishonesty and every kind of thing. And I actually think that makes people. It's interesting. It's like it's actually a gift, because the person in the desperate situation who reads your books will find a really good place to be, because you're people of faith, but you're not perfect, and you're not you didn't live a life that was pristine. And I think it's nice for people to be able to meet people like you through the books, or through, I know that you do a podcast. They also do a podcast, and we'll put all of this stuff on the Facebook page. But they also do marriage guidance work and retreats, which I presume is on a website that you have, which we will put links to all of that, because I just think, and they've just talked about.
What's the name of the podcast?
Our podcast, which is myself and my dad and Jay's, my brother, it's called Unashamed with Phil Roberts.
And the website?
AlanLisaRobertson.com.
Yeah, and people can go there, because I actually think, I think it'd be a gift for any community across the country to have them come and work and do this workshop, because, as I said, they're not coming in like, oh God, look at how perfect our marvelous, wonderful marriage and this marvelous past we've had, and all these gorgeous children and everything. No, actually, it's a very messy story, and I think that makes people feel like, okay, I can talk now. I can tell you what I did, or I can tell you what happened with me. And as I said, I'm rereading Desperate Forgiveness, and just I get just like goosebumps about it. And I really loved. And it's really helpful for people to read this. I really do. I really can't recommend it enough. But I loved where you kind of explained forgiveness by two particular stories: the Amish story, which I even start to kind of tear up just thinking about it, like the worst thing that you could ever imagine.
Charles Roberts enters the Amish schoolhouse and shoots 10 schoolgirls, and then kills himself.
And I can't remember his motivations now, but the one thing about evil, that's right. The Amish responded almost immediately. The parents of these children, with grace towards his family, because obviously he's arrested and taken out of the community. But, they understood what they were going through because, which would be so easy just to throw everybody in the same lot. I mean, this guy killed my child, and yet they went and extended grace and forgiveness to this family and said, look, this has been a terrible thing, but we understand that if we're going to move forward from this terrible tragedy, and they were doing that almost immediately.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. I mean, it's in their case, out of something desperate, you saw that what they believed, they were able to put into action, out of a terrible tragedy.
But they were, and it's interesting because we've just been in Ireland and spending time there, where Ireland has really thrown religion under the bus in a lot of ways, and you feel it and you notice it all over the place. And when you hear that story of the Amish, when you hear your story of what happened to you and how you, read the gospel and realized that Jesus forgave.
Yeah.
In the worst possible scenario, the people were, what were they doing? They were gambling. They were gambling about his clothes, right?
That's right.
And he's on the cross with these desperate people and says, "Forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." And I think of that line all the time because I think that's because we had that experience very much when we were doing the work on the Gospel book and reading about these. Demonic, really, situation that was happening there, where one of the guys, Steve Massop, and I've told you guys about this before, where, he got me praying, basically, because I was so terrified by reading what he had done, where he said he'd be there and they'd be doing the ultrasound or whatever, they'd have the needle, and they would say, "Good shot," if they killed the baby with the needle, that he spoke like that, and he was joking around. And, when you think of, so I think, that kind of extraordinary forgiveness that you describe, where people find solace is actually when they think about Jesus, about the example of Jesus in that extraordinary situation where he could have, why don't you save yourself? Why didn't you save yourself? Do you want to talk to that?
Well, and I'll say about that, this thing you painted, because a lot of people will say, well, I really, this person doesn't seem like they are sorry for what they did. So therefore, I'm not beholden to forgive them for anything. In other words, I can't forgive unless they ask me for it. I've heard this even put forward as a theology. But what you mentioned shows you that you can. In other words, these people that were crucifying Christ, they weren't saying we're doing something wrong. They just went about their business. Mm-hmm. He looked at them and said, "Father, forgive them. They don't even know what they're doing here by killing your son, here on this earth." And so I think that's a great example for us. And Lisa mentioned it, that she was able to forgive her uncle. He never asked for it. But Lisa and I, in our own desperate place in our marriage, realized that if we were going to move forward from some of the things we were dealing with, she was going to have to extend that forgiveness, even though we hadn't asked, to release her. And I was going to have to do the same. And to be honest with you, as bad as it was for Lisa, it was just as hard for me.
Yes.
Because this man had affected my relationship with my wife for 15 years. And yet I had to let it go. And so I think Jesus gives us that ultimate example of the best way to move forward. It's not easy.
And it's not easy.
It's not easy.
What about the argument that it's not important, that you shouldn't think about forgiveness, you shouldn't dwell on the past, you should move on? I think you talked about that, Lisa, in the book. Surely you should move on. Don't dwell on the past. Don't think about bad things. Be forward-looking and look to the future.
Well, and you do have to do that, except for the fact that whenever you harm someone, you have to make amends for harming someone. And whenever you have been through something very traumatic, as we both have, then you have to go back and think about the things that happened. At 7 years old, my uncle told me, "Don't ever tell anyone." Mm. Well, so I learned this honesty at 7 years old. I could never tell anybody about anything. That went all the way through my life. I had to go back and revisit that because I had to learn to be honest and to be truthful. And if you don't go back and fix those things, because Satan has a way of lying to you. When things happen to you, it's your fault. I'm 7 years old and I'm thinking it's my fault that someone's molesting me. It's my responsibility at 7 years old. You have to go back and change those. You have to go back in your psyche, and fix those things that Satan has lied to you about so long in your life. whenever you fix those things and you realize that God can forgive you, that you can forgive somebody else, it is amazing what happens within your soul and within your life and the blessings that come forward.
And one of the things that we never wanted to forget was the pathway we found out. You know, when Lisa and I were doing some media for our first book, we were on Sean Hannity's radio show. And we love Sean. We have a great relationship with him. So Sean, he has the bullet points on the book, and he's looking at us. And at this time, the show's at the ultimate popularity. And he says, why would you guys write a book about that? I mean, like, there's adultery and abortion.
Yes.
He was like, people love your family. Why do you want to talk?
By the way, he's not the only one who thinks that. By the way, I mean, I have to say, when I read it first, I was like, oh my God, how did they do this, right?
So he's, goes through his list, and he's looking at Lisa, and he's like, why would you do this? And Lisa says, well, Sean, we want to help people. Like, these things happen, but we overcame something, and now we feel like we have this gift and secret to success. We want other people to know about it. And he said, well, there's things I wouldn't even tell my wife that I did when I was young. And Lisa immediately says, well, I'm glad I'm not married to you, Sean Hannity. So, and all the crews are laughing. They're like, oh, she got
But it's interesting, as I'm listening to you here, and I just literally just thought this, someone should make a movie of your story.
Yeah, funny.
And it's a great movie.
That's what I thought.
I'll give one. I can see that picture of you that awful night. I mean, I was very affected by your first book, and by the second. I love the second one as well. But the first one, which obviously tells the whole story. And I actually think it's better not to tell the story here. People need to get the book and read it, because it's quite an extraordinary story. It's a movie. But there's a scene. The scene that one of the scenes I remember is you when he threw you out of the house, and you're at the table. And I think the kids are in bed or whatever, isn't that it? But you're at the table alone, and I think, there's so much of this. I just love your story. You had phoned up a girlfriend of hers and said she's alone, and even though you were extremely hurt, extremely angry, you were like still taking care of her. You were like,
my first call was to her best friend, who had blamed me for all of our problems because I was judgmental, controlling, and of course Lisa had been lying to her too, her best friend. And so my first call was to her, because you're right. As angry as I was with her, I didn't want anything bad to happen to her. And so I knew that she needed that comfort in her life. Yeah. And she wound up being a great guy. She and her husband and a sounding board.
It's fantastic. And I really do think, honestly, I think it's a great movie, and I think it'll be really inspiring.
If we only knew some filmmakers.
If only that. Yeah. Just that and a couple of $1 million. But we should
that's the hard part.
But we should keep talking. We raised $2 million for another movie that was worthwhile, and I think, honestly, I do think your story is very inspiring, and more people need to know it. And we're not giving the whole thing away here, but people should get both books, because I really do think they're inspiring.
I you're probably the first. This is like the social media version of Al and Lisa, where you think everyone has this perfect life. You see on Facebook, having a wonderful time.
Picture's beautiful.
Everything's beautiful. The backstory is very, very interesting, and is definitely allows them to write a book called Desperate for Forgiveness. There's no doubt about that.
The first book is called A New Season.
Mm-hmm. And so look, I want to say something about you guys too. We met, and I didn't know you. And then, like, after that week we were together on the cruise, I grew to really love and appreciate you guys. So I got a copy of the book. You were still working on the book at that time for Guys Now. And I guess the film was, working on it. You had done it, but it hadn't come out yet. And when I read Guys Now, and then you guys gave me we asked you
to write the forward.
And it was so powerful. And I really believe this, that you guys, what we're seeing now is finally you got clear fight in the pro-life movement. But I believe what you did with Guys Now started that process. And so I just want to thank you for that, to this podcast audience, because it was so powerful. I've never been so angry when I read a book. And yet so resolved to do something about it. So that's what the book and the movie did for me. So thank you guys so much for doing that.
Thank you very much.
As journalists, we want to tell the story, but I think it's really, and Gosnell is now almost a household name in America.
That's right.
And I think that is a great achievement that the book and the movie has done that, and you're writing the foreword. But he deserves to be.
That's right.
So, just to finish up talking about the book, which again I highly recommend. Near the end, you have these 13 disciplines that people should try and follow in their lives to try and embrace forgiveness and and make their life better, by the way, by doing that. And one of them just jumped out at me, which I think you will agree with me, was like to forgive your political and ideological enemies. And I have to say, because we've actually talked a little bit about this stuff on the podcast, and we'll continue obviously to talk through 2020 about this, where so many weird things happen with Trump, where people break up with people. So a girl I shared a flat with in Italy 1,000 years ago, whatever, really nice girl. We had this fabulous relationship, and I loved her. I love her now. And anyway, but she broke up with me. She wrote to me on Facebook, and we hadn't been in touch for ages, and we said, we're done. You and me, we're over, And that's kind of, I'm being a bit lightweight about that one, but I have traveled around the country, and of course you guys know this more than anyone, and I've met, and I'd be interested also in your advice here. I really want to hear your thoughts on this, where people have lost children over the election, basically, where their children, grown children, have said, I'm done with you.
Yeah.
And it's really hard on parents. It must be really a nightmare for a parent to have your child alive and not talking to you. So it's kind of, I was kind of being funny about it at the same time, but have you advice about that? And tell us what was the inspiration of the forgiving the
Well, I think one of the reason we thought about this for the book is because of the realities of where we are. Up until just not too many years ago, America was pretty much, once an election cycle is over and someone wins, whether it was your person or not, your party or not, you were able to say, okay, let's look, the next 4 years. So we can still be in opposition. We can still say what we disagree, but there wasn't just such vitriol. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I would argue now in the era of Trump, it's not even every 4 years, it's every 2 years. So every time we do another national election, it just gets so we're like everybody else. We've never seen it this bad, where it's so entrenched both ways. And of course, obviously, being a conservative, I feel like this whole socialist, wild, crazy thing on the left, how could you ever agree with these people and learn that? And yet at the same time, I'm compelled by the same spiritual principles of my life to say that these are just, they're people. They're Americans. Yeah. They don't act like it many times, but at the same time, so I have to find a way to not let that affect me. And like you said, it's terrible to affect your relationships when it affects your spouse or your children.
Actually, yeah, and I was reading the book, and you remember the guy you talked about, Matt Holmes?
Yeah.
And the phrase that jumped out at me is that Matt was a sinner and a drinker, and then he found Jesus, but then he became, I suppose, addicted to Jesus in some ways, and reading books, and became really smart about religion. And as you said, he wanted to win an argument rather than persuade people.
That's right.
And that's what a lot of people, I think I'm probably guilty of it myself. You want to win an argument, you don't want to persuade people. I think that's what people are at now, and that's what Twitter's at. And, so I think people, that's one way to lessen the antagonism, is if somebody comes at you, don't think about winning the argument, think about persuading them. And it may sound subtle, but it means you come at someone in a completely different way.
Right.
And
to your point, there was a man just this week that was out at my dad's house. He's CEO of a media company. He's from San Antonio, Texas. And he sends me an email and he says, 4 years ago, you guys spoke at a men's conference and somebody brought me. He said, I was an entrenched liberal. I mean, all my media was liberal. I hated conservatives. And I listened to you guys speak. And I was so moved and convicted that it started something inside me. He said it took a few years, but he said now I've left, my liberal way of thinking. And he wanted to come down and just study the Bible with my dad. Oh. And after 4 years. And so Dad, who was like, Dad, so here's what Dad tells me. He gets a letter and he says, I'll call the left winger up and get him down to the house. I want to talk to this guy. So, but it was amazing because just what you said. I mean, when we want to present a case that's something to think about.
Yes.
And we did it, of course, through a more religious and biblical worldview, but still it's the same thing. And if that's your goal, as opposed to just destroy. Today it's just about destruction. Yeah. Where social media makes it so easy because in 140 characters or whatever it is, we want to just destroy.
Persuade to win. Persuade to win is a friend of mine in Aspen, Melanie, who has actually come up with a whole thing about that. That's her whole thing. She goes out and trains people about persuading people rather than having this kind of full-on fight.
Well, one of our kids, whenever all of this first started, when Trump was first elected, one of our children, and she has her own opinions about many things.
She's very young, so she's strong.
I come into her house one day and it's on CNN, and I'm like,
What happened here?
You're such failures. And it was, you know, it was right after Trump was elected, so there was lots of things happening, you know. And so, you know, my first thought was, Lord, it's that man you gave her, but it wasn't. I mean, she's very.
You do realize many parents would come into a house and if it was on the porn channel, they'd think it's fake.
So, you know, I talked to Alan about it. I was just like, I just don't understand this. And it was, you know, everything Trump said was bad, you know. But what I suggested was, I said, don't watch just this channel. Watch other channels. And, you know, they did. And they began to see that everything that they were watching was one-sided.
Yeah.
And now, you know, they fuss at the TV along with me and Alan, you know, about liberal thinking and all that. So it's, it was just because, you know, at first their thinking was a little bit messed up. And, you know, they're in their 30s. So, you know,
Just
in that.
So they're millennial, you know, and that mindset is so strong, you know, and there's such a peer draw to it. And so in my own house, you know, my granddaughter who's 13 years old, she came in and she said, Pat, she calls me Pat. She says, Pat, have you seen Trump's what he says about transgenders in the military? So I'm stunned. This person here, granddaughter said, no, of course I knew, but I was like, no, tell me about it. So she says, you know, she goes through what she had heard. I don't even know where she heard it. She goes to a Christian school. I'm like, where are you learning transgender?
It lives with us. I mean.
So she said, so she gives me her thing, and she thought it just sounded unfair. That why wouldn't these transgender? So instead of just like, oh, you know, you're a crazy 13-year-old, I said, well, think about this. And so I started laying out a scenario about her dad who served in Afghanistan. I said, say he's in a foxhole, and there's somebody next to him, and he's shot. And the person next to him doesn't have the upper body strength to be able to drag him out of that hole. I said, there are reasons why they do this. Really not against people. They're trying to protect them. So I just explained to her how that wasn't the best policy, especially for military, without even getting into anything else. And she looked at me and she said, well, that makes sense. She said, okay. And then she just goes on her way. As a 13-year-old. Right, exactly. But it's like, you know, you get those moments where you try to put principles, you know, into the next generation, because what they hear, especially through social media, is not going to be, you know, very, very conservative.
No. And even with our children, I think we just have to rely on that truth that's eventually going to come around. And they see truth, you know. Millennials especially.
And if one of them goes for one of these 2020 Democrats, then I'm going to have to write a new book about forgiveness.
Yeah.
Then we got to go through the whole, we got to reimagine the whole thing.
Yeah, we started back from scratch.
We put Elizabeth Warren in, we got major.
That's really desperate forgiveness.
I would be desperate all over again.
Also, yes.
Yeah, plus.
And we're going to write it from another country.
We really are moving country.
Bunkers.
We're not yet. That's right. We're not messing about this. We actually are moving if she gets elected, which is actually a nice segue into. I think it's time to talk about some of my favorite things. And one of the things that we're going to do when we have guests, no matter who we have that we're going to be interviewing, we're going to ask them, because I think people really do care about food, about the favorite cocktail, and about a piece of art that means a lot to you. And I know I talked to you guys, asked you to think about that beforehand. But I think we want to start with, I think there might be a cocktail story here. Is there a cocktail then that you can make, that you can explain to us how to make, that is just something fabulous?
All right, so I've been thinking about this one, and this will apply to both of us, so it's perfect. So we were in Mexico one time. We love the beach. You know, we go to the Bahamas and we go to Mexico. And so when you're in that tropical setting, you want those tropical drinks. You know, it's just something about the little thing in the fruit.
Oh yeah, you want the umbrella.
To the point of heartburn, you know. And so we were in a resort, and there was and I'll never forget, this little short Mexican guy. His name was Gasper, Gasper. His little name tag.
Oh yeah.
And so I was like, you know, well, Gasper, and I look at his name tag, said, you know, make us something special, you know, just like, you know, dealer's choice.
Oh yeah.
And so he put something together. Well, Lisa and I drink it, and it was amazing. It was just the right combination of everything. So then I have to find where Gasper is every day that we go out, because they move them around to different locations. Oh, yeah. So I'm looking, because I don't know what it is. It's the Gasper. It's become the Gasper. Oh, yeah. You know, and so finally the last day we would find him every day. So tell me when you're moving, because we're following you. And so he showed me how he made the drink. And it's basically, it's pretty simple, but it's based with the Malibu rum. That's kind of the base of it. And then you add in a little bit of the Midori, which is the green liqueur, the melon liqueur. You put some pineapple juice in there, because that's kind of the sweetening of it. And then you put a little bit of dark rum on top. And just a little bit of cherry juice and a couple of cherries, maybe a hunk of pineapple. It is such a refreshing. So if you're like thinking, man, I need to get into my beach zone, the Gasper. Which poor Gasper, he's somewhere in Mexico, and now we're talking about.
And you're going to make $1 million off.
We're going to make this new drink, the Gasper.
They're going to be selling that, and it'll be available. That's right, Jerry.
On their merchandising on their website.
I really like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's right. We have to try that. Yeah, because like you have to, sometimes you're in those situations. I got a drink somewhere in Washington D.C. and I actually wrote about it on Facebook, and somebody said, "I'm a chef. I'm going to back engineer this thing." Really great. It was the base was bourbon, but then there was like some kind of it was creamy, but stuck into it, which I thought was genius. Was a piece of bacon, cold, that had been bathed in chocolate.
Oh wow!
And put in the fridge, and then so it's stuck up like that. So you're kind of eating that with this drink. Oh my God, it's like the best thing ever.
She's telling me that, and she was.
I went to see.
She keeps telling me she told me it's terrible here. It's terrible here. Next thing I see on Facebook, this cocktail with a chocolate.
Chocolate dip. There's nothing. The truth is, and all.
I'm sitting at home eating macaroni and cheese.
There's just nothing wrong. As long as there's bacon in it, it's all going to work out okay in this world. So then our next question that we're going to ask everyone is like the favorite recipe that you have, your go-to recipe. When people are coming to your house that know you and they say like, I hope they make that. What did they hope you make?
Probably macaroni and cheese, but
which I think I've had.
I have one recipe that I hardly ever make, mainly because it's time consuming, and it's called pecan chicken. But just
pecan chicken.
Yeah. But just here recently, our son-in-law, and he's been in the family for 7 years.
Oh, number 2. Yeah.
And so he's never had it. So I text him and I say, "So what do you want to eat, for your birthday?" Well, my daughter texts back and says, "Roast and rice and gravy,"
Because that's her favorite.
Because that's her favorite. And I said, "Well, you can't say what he wants. It has to be his choice." And so he said, "Well, I've been hearing a lot about this pecan chicken, and I probably haven't made it in 10 years. And so I said, "Pecan chicken it is." And, I think the reason why it's so good is because you have to roast pecans. Mm-hmm. You also have syrup, maple syrup in it, brown sugar. So,
diabetes on a plate.
Exactly.
And that's what I always say. I always say you can go into a diabetic coma after eating this meal, but it's delicious. It really is. It's one of our favorite things, but it's very time consuming. It probably takes 4 hours to make it.
Yeah, counting the prep. And so then she usually does a wild rice with it. So that sweet drizzle over the chicken and the rice is really tasty. So it's a great meal. We have done it for.
Do you have it written up somewhere?
Oh yeah.
So we can.
And you have to
so we put it on the Facebook page.
You have to pair it with green bean bundles. You take the frozen green beans, wrap them in bacon, and put a little bit of that sweet sauce on those, and then you bake those in the oven. So it's really.
I think we have to go back.
Yeah.
To Louisiana soon. See that coming up.
I've always loved Louisiana in the summer, in August.
Two there.
Lovely, sounds good.
So our version of that, by the way, is Magda's favorite, which is eggplant parmesan.
I love that.
You've had it, right?
Yeah.
Which gets made infrequently. It's same reason, because it's quite a hassle. But honestly, it definitely gets made for very special occasions.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we want that recipe. I love the sound of that. As you said, diabetic coma afterwards.
Yeah.
But that's what special occasions are all about.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. So do you have any more questions?
Piece of art?
Oh yes, that's what I want to talk about now.
You have one. I have one.
Okay, why don't you start?
So I'll start.
Okay.
There's a movie that's also a play, and I've had the opportunity to see both. It was a limited Broadway run. We just happened to be in town, and it's called Big Fish. And Tim Burton made the movie.
Yes.
And I don't know who did the play, but it was fantastic as well. But both stories a little bit different from the theater to the screen. But the premise of the movie. Albert Finney is in the movie, and he's wonderful. Mm-hmm. And then Ewan McGregor is a younger version of Albert Finney. So you meet him, and then you go back, and so you're watching his life unfold. What was powerful about the movie to me was when I cry every time I watch it. It's like I can't not cry at the end because he tells these fantastical tales about his life. And his son, who's he's a journalist, and his son is sort of like, oh yeah, we've heard these stories all my whole life. And so he doesn't believe any of his dad, Albert Finney's stories are true because they're so fantastical. But he just has this ability to tell wonderful stories.
Right.
And so the movie's sort of the Tim Burton angle, as you can imagine, watches Ewan McGregor go through and these fantastical, crazy things happen, which is Albert Finney's early life. And so when you get to the end, Albert Finney is an older man, he's dying. And so he keeps saying, get in the bathtub. He said, I just need to get in some water. I'm just feeling dried out. And at the end, he said, I want you to go and put me in the river. And so his son starts to tell him a story as he's dying about him taking his dad and putting him in the river. And he becomes this giant fish. And that's why it's called a big fish. Mm-hmm. And so the premise of the movie is that he was so big and so bigger than life that really he stood out. He was almost too big of a fish to be in this life because of all the money. Mm-hmm. So at the funeral at the end, all these people are coming by, and the son is recognizing that that's the guy
from
the
that story.
That's the guy. Man, there's a giant there. There's these. It's all these crazy. The movie's kind of crazy. But so the reason what gets me at the end, I weep every time at the end with the story, is because I feel the same way about my dad. He's like this big fish, He's almost larger than life. And so, and he's based on all these crazy stories and everything that's got him there. And so it always gets me because, I went through a period where I didn't have a good relationship with him, just like the son did in the movie. And at the end, of course, they reconcile that and he respects his dad. And so I think for that reason, that film, that story is so powerful to me. I see it in my own life, but it's really, really good.
So we're going to put them up on the Facebook page because people I think really like to see that.
This section is a piece of art.
A piece of art that our guests have been moved by in their lives. It could be a movie, it could be a poem, it could be a piece of art,
picture,
it could be a sculpture, it could be a painting. And what about you, Lisa?
Well, I think ours would be our Duck Commander musical. So it's based on Willie and Corey's book, Duck Commander Family. Mm-hmm. And it was New York actors and actresses, Broadway. But it was shown in
Vegas.
In Vegas.
For a month.
We only had one.
It's like one of you guys.
3 months, but it got cut down to a month. I mean, it was absolutely the best thing that I've ever seen. And we were going to see it again and we couldn't. But one of the best things about it, I guess, is because same thing. It tells about our life and it tells about Phil and Miss Kay and the struggles that they had, but then ultimately how he embraced Christ and how it changed our family and changed our family dynamic. I think the same thing because I have a friend who played me, and her name is Haley Swindle Tampliff is her name now. She actually met her husband the night that the Broadway show aired. I mean, the first time.
Oh, fantastic.
And so, but she is beautiful, a beautiful girl. She has a sweet little girl named Lily, but I still watch her and we go and see things that she does in New York because she's still in New York.
They actually favor a lot. And of course, Haley, she's a lot younger than Lisa.
Well, yeah, she's my kid's age.
She's the kid because the story in the musical was when we were young.
Yeah. And is the music available anywhere? Is it like on Spotify or?
I don't know that it is.
They keep saying they're going to put it like in
recondition it, maybe put it in Branson or someplace where it can go. It's so incredible that it's sad to me because it was done at such a high level. To produce it in the way they wrote it and did it.
So who wrote the music?
Cost a lot of money. There were 4 guys from New York. All Broadway performers.
Oh,
and
two of them were twin brothers.
They
composed the music.
They composed all the music.
And wrote the songs.
There's one about Sign called Ladies Man, and just that one number alone. And he's taken off all these things because he's representing different eras of the 70s, and he's singing this song. This actor they have he looks a little bit like Sign.
Oh my God!
It was just so.
The actors were unbelievable.
Yeah,
they really were. I mean,
I have to say, if I knew that musical was on in Vegas, I would be dragging out to Vegas.
Oh yeah, that's what we're so sad. Wasn't
for these things to be successful, and I know it myself with Ferguson and all that. It starts to get popular after a month.
That's right.
There's a word of mouth.
Right.
You actually it needs to be there for 3 months, 6 months, because word of mouth and journalists go and people go and columnists
go. Originally it was supposed to be there 3 months, but they were losing so much money you know, because they had these actors and actresses all the way to Vegas, you know, to do it.
Actually, Tommy Mottola, who used to be, remember he was married to Mariah Carey, head of Sony Entertainment for a long time. He was the main funder of the thing. We're talking about $7 or $8 million.
Oh yeah, no, it's a big
And loved it. He's a hunter, you know, so he saw the story and he thought he didn't believe in it. And it was so
gone on the road.
Yeah, if we could have gone on the roads or gotten to New York, it's just so expensive.
No, of course
you
it
know?
is. But I think I would really. What year was that?
2014
or 15.
15, I think. Yeah, I think it was 15.
Okay, well, I think we've come to the end of this particular episode of the Ann and Phelim Scoop, and this has been just absolutely fabulous. I was kind of nervous this morning. I was thinking because this is our first time interviewing anyone, but I couldn't wish for a more wonderful couple to be the very first people we've had as guests. It's actually just the most perfect thing, and we just love you guys forever.
Well, I was worried too because I watched your podcast and I laughed the whole entire time.
In the Sky Club with earbuds in and drawing attention from the attendants. She laughs the whole time.
And so, you know, I thought, I'm not going to be able to say anything. I'm just going to laugh at them the whole time we're on.
You guys are so good together.
You are.
So thank you.
We're very honored to be a part of it.
Well, we're so delighted to have you. Thank you so much, guys.